Welcome to Let's Dad This, a podcast by bros just trying to dad their best. All are welcome here. Dads, moms, pet parents, non-parents, and everything in between.
Also have to call out plant parents because I didn't think of that last time. And I was accosted by some folks saying, what about our plant parents? Anyway, I'm Jason. I'm the older brother, dad of 3, uncle of many, including a newbie who is, as we record, less than 2 weeks old. Congratulations.
Thank you. She sure is. Also, the first time we did the intro, I forgot to say, after all are welcome here, I forgot to mention dads. So good job by both of us. I'm Adam. I'm the younger brother. I am officially a dad of one tiny human who we will talk about in this episode, and an uncle of many, many more.
We have been brothers nearly my entire life.
And all of mine.
I've been a dad for almost 14 years.
And I am officially living that dad life as of 2/27.
Every episode, we're going to dive into some little baby topics and one big baby main topic to share our perspectives as seasoned and brand new dads. So let's dive in.
I wasn't prepared for the voices. I really liked them. That's fantastic. All right, let's just get right into it. What are our first little baby topics, Jay?
All right, well, you asked me for advice about giving advice to new dads, but I'm actually going to flip the script and ask you, what is it that you like to hear from seasoned dads, and how do you like to get that advice? Because the last thing anybody wants is unsolicited advice from anybody, really. So you tell me.
Okay, yeah, that's totally fair. That's a good point. I will say, I think first off, it's like, not only is it person to person on what new dads, how they want their advice, but like it's person to person by like who gives me that advice. Like you being my big brother and best friend, if you give me advice, I take it like realizing there is no malice, there's no judgment, and there's no nothing behind it. If literally anyone else offers me unsolicited advice, I have found myself being sassy about it. Even our father, who I love, he was very proud of it. He was like, sleep when the baby sleeps. And instead of like laughing it off because I was very sleep deprived, I was like, sure, Dad, and I'll just clean the bottles when the baby cleans the bottles, and I'll do my taxes when the baby does the taxes. Like there's a comedian. I don't remember what comedian it is. I think it's Tom Papa, but like I just used that and I found myself getting sassy and I was like, he just means well. But I will say like, I think it's okay to offer new dads advice like when you're having a conversation about something. Like if I were to bring up to you organically, I'm going to say the name of my baby later, but that will be a big reveal. So I'm going to say, if I'm like, yeah, baby is having some issues like eating, like they won't slow down. And if you were kind of say like, yeah, we had that issue too, and like, this is what we did. I think that's one way to do it. Very like kind and gently. I imagine as I get more experience with baby, and by more experience, I mean like they are in the world longer than 2 weeks. And so I'm a little less sleep deprived. I'll probably be a little less prickly when it comes to getting advice because I'm also like, our emotions are all over the place and everything. But I would say like a good way to do it is just saying like, this is how we responded to that experience if you happen to have it, as opposed to being like, well, this is what you should do. Do you remember like people, and I mean, even now with your kids, like, how do you feel about getting advice? And then also, how do you feel about giving it as now someone who I'm turning to frequently for advice?
The worst thing you can do is try to solve somebody's problem who does not want their problem solved. Ironically, I started watching season 5 of Parks and Recreation last night, which is when Chris and Ann are about to embark on becoming co-parents. And I remember, I didn't watch this episode yesterday, but I remember that when Ann is pregnant, she goes to Chris with all of her problems and he keeps on trying to solve them. And that annoys her because all she really wants is for him to say, that sucks, I'm sorry. And because of that, which is a very real thing, I think, in the real world, anytime I'm talking to somebody and I'm venting or they're venting to me, I try to be cognizant of what is it that they're looking for here? Is it a strategy to help the baby sleep or to help the baby latch or to get rid of diapers that don't smell up your house? Or is it just that they are going through something and they want an empathetic ear to listen? So anytime I get asked something like that, I try to evaluate it at least through the lens of, is this person looking for help? because I don't have the answers. I do know what worked for us. And I think that's the other caveat. And I said this a bunch in episode 1. This is what worked for us. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but if you are looking for strategies, here is what worked for us. And I also think it's safe to just ask the question. So if you come to me and say, we're having this issue with A, B, or C, I can say, would you like to know what we did? Or first, I'm sorry, that really, really sucks. I remember that. It's terrible. Happy to share what we did if that's if that would be helpful for you. But I think that's the way to approach it, because we don't have all the answers. You're in it, in the thick of it right now, so you're going to have a lot more of the answers than I am, because even in the last 4 years, that changes.
Yeah, and I will say like that Parks and Rec episode is so perfect because I feel like this is going to come up a lot on our show, shared love of Parks and Rec. Like I very much see myself as a Chris Traeger type person. Like he's a golden retriever of a person, and he's always trying to solve his partner Anne's problems. In all essence, when she's pregnant, but like I know I am like that too with Alex, my partner. And it was like that during labor, and I was fine. I needed to stop being like, what can I do? Because she didn't want to make a decision at that time. So she's kind of like I just had to do some stuff for her. So I will say like, it's tricky because there's this balance, like you said, of like offering advice sometimes can feel like stepping over a line, but certainly sharing your own experiences, I would say, is probably the best way to do it. But just like gently saying like, this is what we did. It's when people, and they do tend to be older, this isn't like across the board, but like when people say, well, this is how we did it, and it may have been like 15 or 30 years ago, and I'm like, great, things are different now. I appreciate where you're coming from, but like just a world of difference between our experiences. Not saying that's right or wrong, but like the world changes.
Generally, just insisting that the way that someone else did something is the right way to do it, especially if you're not doing it a certain way. And this isn't about parenting, just about anything really.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a prompt here is, what advice would I give to people on giving advice? It's first and foremost, be authentic and understand whether or not what the person you're talking to is looking for is actually advice, because the worst thing you could do is give advice to somebody who's not looking for that, especially if it's unprompted. So that would be my advice, unprompted, on how to give advice. And with that, I would love to move to baby topic number 2, which is, widow baby topic number 2. And that is, what parenting books have helped you in the first 2 weeks of name redacted's life?
Yeah, soon to be unredacted. Yeah, so for those of you who somehow don't know who we are, I imagine our early listeners very much know who we are and are listening because they want to support us. But Jay and I both worked in the literary industry for many, many years, and I got to co-host a podcast called The Professional Book Nerd, so I got to interview authors all the time. So books are huge in our lives, and it's massive for me. I'm going to quickly run through all the books I read. I'm not going to like give you breakdowns of all of them, and then I'll say like what has actually helped. So I read a book called Matrescence by Lucy Jones, which is like specifically about the change that women go through as they become pregnant, like the physiological, emotional, mental changes that women experience as they're going through pregnancy. I read 2 books by Emily Oster, Expecting Better and Crib Sheet. She's very data-centric. Emily Oster is awesome about just basically being like, we chose a preschool and we did it by the data, and here's the type of, like, no judgment of like, it's Montessori or it's not, and that's why it's better. She's like, this is just what the data shows. So she's really interesting. I read a book called The Danish Secret to Happy Kids by Helen Russell, because the Danes apparently have very, very happy children. I read Bringing Up Bebe, a very famous book about an American mother bringing up her child in France. And then there's a book called...
That one was by Moira Schitt?
Yeah, by Moira Schitt, exactly.
Bringing Up Bebe.
Bringing up the bebe. And then there's a book called Moms on Call, which is more like sort of like a guide, like a step-by-step guide for like, if you're going to give your newborn a bath, like, set it to about this temperature, put about this much water in, set them in this type of chair, wash them this way. It's like step by step for every single thing. I will say none of those books, like in the first 2 weeks, there has never been a moment with the baby where I've been like, oh, I remember in Matrescence when it said this. But I will say is like having like quote unquote downloaded all of this information into my brain over the past 9 months, it's been super helpful, because there are moments where like the baby a couple nights ago, she's super chill 99% of the time. But a couple nights ago, Alex was getting some rest, and it was between like 10 p.m. and like 1 a.m. And she was just screaming at me, and she was fed. She didn't want any more food. She had been changed. I tried rocking her. I tried putting her in the Baby Bjorn little rocker thing that you guys gave us that she loves. I tried doing tummy time. I tried reading to her, and she was just screaming. And like I remember there was one of the books basically said like babies, until they can roll around, they don't have an ability, like they just can't get rid of energy. And so sometimes the only way a baby can really get rid of energy is just to cry. And so knowing that kind of kept me calm. And the same thing with like just little things like being like, oh, I remember one of the books said, try early on, you're not going to get them into a sleep pattern of any sort until they're at least like 3 or 4 months old. But like start the process of like, if they take 6 naps in a 24-hour period, try to put them in their crib for 2 of them and just like get them used to that environment. And so it's just been like little things like that where something will happen with the baby and I'll be like, I do remember reading something about that. So like that's not super helpful. I would say if there's one takeaway, if you're a person who's not a huge reader and you want one book to help you as a new parent, that Moms on Call book is really, really good because it's like step by step, like, do they have this rash? This is what it means. This is when to call the doctor. This is when to give them, ripe water and stuff like that. So that's probably the one I would say the most has been the most helpful, but just like overall having all these books in my brain has been super helpful just for little moments. That was a lot of talking by me. Do you remember reading any books and do you remember anything that helped you? I saw you kind of nodding your head at something eloquent I said.
I do not remember specifically what books were in my head, but I do think it's interesting that you got all this information and downloaded it and basically saved it for later. And now we can turn this into a LinkedIn post about how your parenting journey has helped us with B2B SaaS sales.
Yes, that's what it's all about.
That is exactly what Warming Up Leads is. And so if any, I don't know, parallel dialers want to sponsor this podcast, we are definitely open for that. Is it Little Remedies that does gripe water?
Mm-hmm.
Hit us up. We're happy. But yeah, so that was one takeaway I had. The other one is I definitely thought that you were going to say she needed to get her gas out. And that's why she was crying. Because the leg cycles, pumping those legs.
Yeah, listen, we do leg cycles. We do lots of rotations. That's another thing. Like TikTok is great for this. Like I follow all these nannies that are just like, burping. Really just, you got to move their bodies around. And so, yeah, stuff like that. No, our baby has thunderous dumps and she leaves in no doubt when she has gone to the bathroom. And she had just done that as well. Again, it was only like one night. Overall, this baby, top-notch baby, above average baby, really good baby.
You've said that, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the main event, which of course is, what was the first thing that Alex could eat after baby was born? Now, I will tell you, with Eliza, the first thing we ate was a fancy dinner at the hospital, and that was a cheese pizza, and it was a little bit less good than school pizza, but there was more of it, so that was good. But quality-wise, it was mid.
Yeah, great use of mid. The kids are gonna love this one.
Teen parents, teen moms and dads.
There you go.
Welcome.
All are welcome here. So I will say, all throughout Alex's pregnancy, what she really, really wanted was like an Italian sub, which is funny because I don't eat meat. I eat fish, but because of that, she doesn't eat a ton of meat either. We're mostly vegetarian and some fish. But she was just like craving it. And so when baby arrived, you and Jess and the kids were actually the first anybody to see them, and you brought us Dave's Cosmic Subs. Dave's, if you would like to sponsor us as well. So you guys brought her an Italian sub that she was quite pleased with, and then actually our sister Heather and brother-in-law Matt also came and brought a different Italian sub, which she also very, very pleased with. That one was on like a ciabatta, like almost like not ciabatta, almost like a focaccia, like that they cracked open and then
I'm not sure that we need to like compare and contrast.
No. It's just subs. That you brought us a Dave's Cosmic Sub, an incredible, I want to say Cleveland-based, but I don't actually know. And then they brought us one from a restaurant that is in Little Italy here in Cleveland. So listen, they were both great. I imagine I didn't eat any of them. They would have killed me dead with my insides. But that for sure, we have eaten several pizzas since that time. And of course, sushi. But that sandwich, I think, really hit home for her, made it all worth it.
That's great. And can you just one more time remind the listeners who was the first to bring food?
Jay and his lovely wife, Jess, were the first ones to bring food, and they actually brought two of their kiddos, Eliza and Sky. It was so cool. It was such a cool experience. Eliza actually helped. I mean, Jay was literally, I think, non-nurse and doctor division. I think you were the first to hold our baby who wasn't us. So good on you. You did the right thing.
Thank you.
It was so cute. It was so wholesome. And yeah, everybody has seen and met the baby other than a couple of cousins. They rule. So that was the first thing they ate. Should we get to the main event here for this particular episode?
I think we should, but let's do it after this commercial break brought to you by Dave's Cosmic Subs. And welcome back. Thanks to that sponsorship from Dave's Cosmic Subs. Can't believe we already got one.
All right. Amazing. So the main topic here is going to be the arrival of Miss Wren May Sokol and the labor and delivery experience of my wife and our baby. So let's stab this. Golly. All right. Listen.
I feel like it was close.
I promise people, like, every episode of this podcast won't be me talking about my experience with a baby who's growing and then being like, and Jay, what do you think? We'll have lots of topics about Jay's kids of various ages, and a lot of times it will not be focused on mine. But because my baby just arrived into the world, we're going to talk about her. So Wren May was born at like 5:30-ish a.m., depending on what time the actual removal of from Alex's body you want to think. I believe it was 5:33 a.m., 8 pounds, 6 ounces, 21 inches long, after 30 hours of labor and a unplanned C-section. So we got to the hospital at 11 p.m. because Alex was going to be induced. She was originally going to be induced at 8 p.m. Ended up getting pushed back to 11. By the time we actually got into the hospital room, it was about 1 a.m. We had been up since that morning.
You go further than this. When you were told not to come to the hospital at your scheduled time, what was your initial reaction and why?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. A bit of frustration. Admittedly, when we did our hospital tour, the person who gave us the tour said, you know, if you get induced, they'll give you a scheduled time, but don't worry. We have so many beds. It never fills up. It won't be a problem. And so when they called us and they're like, we don't have any beds. It's just a chaotic night. Can you come in at 11 p.m.? We were frustrated, anxious, but at the end of the day, we kept telling ourselves, like, at the end of this process, we're going to get to meet our baby. So we tried to keep it into perspective. But admittedly pretty tired. You know, we got to the room by 1 a.m. They got Alex all set up with IVs, and she's such a trooper. They had to stick her like 4 different times, and they did not do a great job of putting her IV in. In fact, this was almost 2 weeks ago when we're recording. Her hand is still black and blue. Not the best. I will say, without going into like all of the harrowing details, we'll get into some of them. One, when you're in labor and delivery, you know, mom is on different medicines and stuff that they are giving her to kind of like start the process. And so around like 3 or 4 a.m., they're like, listen, nothing's going to be happening this quickly because you guys have just been induced. So try to close your eyes. We said, okay. Close our eyes, and we both get startled.
That definitely works, by the way. Definitely works.
Yeah. I'm on a little fold-out chair. She's on a very uncomfortable bed, having people come in and out frequently. You're not getting much rest. But we did drift off for a few minutes, and then we get awoken 45 minutes later to, I believe, 11 different people were in our room, all of them nurses and doctors. One of them wearing a coat who said, hi, I'm insert doctor's name here. I'm the chief of medicine. Never a good sign. Basically what was happening is our baby's heart rate was dropping very, very substantially. A baby's heart rate in utero throughout this process is supposed to be anywhere from like, they basically say like I think ours was like 125 to 145 was the range where they felt perfectly comfortable. Hers had dropped to like 40 beats per minute for about 5 minutes. So they were very, very nervous. Fortunately, they were able to move Alex. Everything was fine. But it kept happening over the 30 hours that Alex was laboring. For a few times, like the medicine wore off. She got an epidural. It stopped working, and she was having severe pain in like her hip and one of her hips. And she's comfortable with me talking about all of this. I should have prefaced that. But it was, as a dad, as a partner at the time, it was very scary because she basically was like almost comatose, like not like she was awake, but she was not like really responding. She wasn't herself. She thought it was about 2 hours. It was actually like 4 hours until they were able to kind of fix her epidural. So it's such a scary process. And we talked about like giving advice, and like this is not an advice thing, but like as a dad, when you're in that moment, whether your wife is having a natural birth or taking some medicine or having a C-section, like you just kind of have to, and you told me this in our first episode, like there are moments where it's just like, okay, I can go get her ice chips, or I can help the nurse move her into a more comfortable position. But then there's some moments where it's like, it's really hard. It's really traumatic to see your partner in so much discomfort, but like it's not going to help her to see me upset. So there were absolutely some moments where like I had to step out, just briefly text Jay, be like, "Woof, this is really, really hard." But like as our father would say, to make a long story short, our OB was the one who was actually like on call when everything was going to happen. He came in, and we weren't as far along as like they would need her to be to start pushing. And he said like, let's give it another hour. And this was about 4 a.m. after she had labored for 30 hours. And he came back about an hour later. She hadn't progressed, and like she was just so exhausted. By that point, she'd been laboring for 30 hours, hadn't eaten anything for about 36 hours, and had been awake for close to 2 days straight, if about like 44 hours. She was just physically and emotionally exhausted. I was getting worried because the baby's heart rate kept dropping for periods of time, longer periods of time. And I was worried for both of them. Ended up having a C-section, and then it was actually the whole time everyone was like, this is going to be a boy. This is boy behavior, acting up like this. We thought it was a girl the whole time. When they like, when you're going through the process of a C-section, and they're like, I'm sitting next to Alex's head, and like they say like, oh, it's a girl. Like, we start sobbing. We're like, we knew it. And like, when a doctor tells you, hey, we should do a C-section after she's been laboring for like 30 hours, there's this moment I could see at Alex's face where I think she felt like, and she and I have talked about this, but like, I think she felt like it was kind of like a failure. Like, oh, I didn't get to the finish line this way. And it was such a like relief when they basically said, they're like, oh, wow, this is a big baby. They were like, you made the right choice. Immediately hearing the doctor be like, this was the right process. And then, recovery, and then baby was there. But yeah, it was a harrowing experience. I'm so glad that they're both doing great, but do not recommend watching your partner go 30 hours in that much discomfort.
Yeah, even just hearing it from the sidelines as you were going through all of this, it takes you right back into that moment in the room. And I mean, to be real, like all of the sights and the sounds and the smells of being in a hospital, it really is traumatic in a variety of ways for all parties involved. And what you guys went through is obviously really, really difficult from the standpoint of like, Jess and I talk about this all the time. Why, when you're getting induced, do they make you come in the evening? Like, you've already gone a full day without sleeping.
Yeah.
Nobody can sleep that day. So, I mean, I'm sure that there's a reason for it, but that's one thing. And then to have you guys be pushed back and then have to wait to start Pitocin, have to wait for the epidural, to have it not work, to have the baby continually be in distress. Like, it's just so much to go through. And I think what dads sometimes don't realize, especially younger dads, is this is major surgery in Alex's case, but it's a major medical procedure in any event. And I think sometimes that's just a little bit lost on especially dads who just don't understand how much torture, our partners' bodies are going through in order to grow this human and then to evict this human into the world.
Yeah, like you said, it's a lot. And I want to give like a special shout out. We went to University Hospitals here in Cleveland, and the entire staff was amazing. But specifically, we had one nurse who they do 12-hour shifts from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And because Alex labored for 30 hours, we had the two same nurses like back-to-back shifts. So there's one named Kim, who's a superhero. And like, she was funny. She was like getting us comfortable. She basically was like, I'm going to put you in positions to get you comfortable. So like, we're all friends here. It's just, nothing's off base. Like, we're all going to become best friends. And we did. And like, she kept us so calm because, like I said, Wren's heart rate kept dropping. And she basically told us, she's like, I will tell you when I'm concerned, or like, I will tell you when my suggestion and the doctor's suggestion is to maybe shift to thinking about a C-section. And like, another version of this was during the actual C-section, Alex's blood pressure, the top number of the two jumped to 253, a number I have never seen before. And our nurse, Kim, was standing behind me, and like I looked at her, and she kind of like put her arm on my shoulder and like squeezed a little bit, and like it was her way of telling me like, I am concerned, but let's just hold on a minute. And they gave Alex the medicine, and it like righted itself, and like I felt her like release the tension, and like I knew, I was like, okay, we're okay. And like this woman, and like she and actually one of the other nurses, 2 days later when we were in recovery, like they stepped away from whatever shift they were currently on, or they may have gotten to work early to come up to recovery to meet Wren and like see us and make sure, like, so stuff like that. You're right. Like for dads, it's such a unique experience. We are not in any shape or form the main character in this, but like the fact that you will have people throughout the experience who are focused on your wife as they should be, or your partner, but like they also take time to make sure you're okay and check in on you. And like that was so important for me, because it's a lot. It's like no one wants to see somebody they know or they care about go through something, and sort of watch them have to do it for such a prolonged period of time. Yeah, it was a lot, but it was very much worth it. We have a perfect little daughter now.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Obviously, difficult for you to recount a little bit, but as you said, lovely, happy ending that we are all so blessed to have in our lives. Looking forward to seeing her again this weekend. I have not seen her since the day after she was born, so we're all really excited.
Yeah. She's walking now, solid foods. Yeah, whole situation. No, yeah, she's great. Ren May, perfect baby, sleeping through her like little shifts, just the coolest. So yeah, well, I'm sure I'll like be able to process, and we'll have more specific topics about her specifically. But for now, let's shift a little bit to the end of the episode. You had a really great idea for a last segment, so I want you to introduce it, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, so as you know, every episode we'll do some kind of little ender game. Could be trivia, could be whatever else I talked about in episode 1 that I already don't remember. But today is the first of many recurring segments about dad stuff. Yeah. What dad stuff are you currently using with your little baby daughter? And then I'll talk about what I'm using for my kiddos.
Yeah. Okay, I have 4. I'll go through them really, really quickly. One is the Owlet. It is they call it a sock, but it basically like it's this little monitor that wraps around your baby's foot. I will say like it's a little pricey. I think it's a couple $100, but it's such an awesome peace of mind. It comes with an app. What you do is you wrap it around their foot at night, and it tells you their oxygen level, their heart rate, and if they're sleeping or awake. And so it's just like a nice peace of mind where you don't have to go check in on your baby every 5 minutes. You're still going to, but this, you can also have this. So the Owlet is really, really awesome. It's a little finicky with, if it moves off of the specific spot, it will beep at you and scare you, but Alex has figured out how to do that pretty well. So I love the Owlet. You look like you were going to say something about the Owlet there.
We absolutely adored our Owlet. It was when we were talking to you guys about stuff that you needed in advance, and you guys were just kind of like, hey, what kind of stuff did you use? Which you pulled for everybody. It's not like we unsolicited advice this to you.
Call back.
To bring it back to the beginning. That's exactly right. But that was the one thing where we're like, this was so much peace of mind for us because, and again, like this is wild to me. In addition to the fact that babies don't come with instruction manuals, it's like 1 minute they are hooked up to all of these monitors and stuff at the hospital. The next minute they're just like chilling in the crib by themselves. And you're like, what is happening? And that's why then you take them home and they're like at your house in your crib or bassinet with nothing to monitor. And it's like you had, Wren, her heartbeat dropped a bunch during labor and delivery. And like, I don't know, science, medicine, I'm sure says that that's not just going to happen now, but I don't know why. So having the Owlet, huge peace of mind for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I super recommend it if it's something that you can budget in for sure. A free one is called Huckleberry. It's an app that you track how often your baby has fed, whether if you're doing breastfeeding like left, right, if you're doing bottles, how much, if it's formula, like you track pees, poops, naps. It's just like a tracker that you have on your phone. And what's the reason it's really great, one is like if a baby gets fussy, it's really nice to look at that and be like, oh, you know what? It's actually been like about 2 hours since we last fed. It probably is feeding if you like aren't picking up on their cues just yet. It's also really good for the first few pediatrician appointments because they do ask you like, Wren had a little bit of jaundice. So like the first pediatrician appointment, they're like, how often is she pooping and what's it look like? Because that's how you get rid of bilirubin, which is what causes jaundice. I know so much about baby poop now, guys. So the Huckleberry app is really great and just so soothing to like look at the report and be like, my baby dumped 7 times today. Let's go. So the
I like that you're
Huckleberry
really
app
leaning in on dump.
dumps. Yeah, listen, dumps makes me laugh every time. So the Huckleberry app is really really great. The two others, Wren, I've been calling it goblin mode. Like when she eats, she acts like it's her last meal, and like she's like trying to like really really suck down like the bottles, and so we want to slow her down a little bit so she doesn't get indigestion and gastro everything. So the Advent bottles have like a kind of slow flow, so it just sort of slows her down a little bit. That's been really great.
We also use Doc Brown because our kids were gassy and they have a straw in it that
Mm-hmm.
does something with like making sure that they don't get as much air as they're gulping.
Yeah, we also have those. Those seem to work pretty well. And then the last thing I will say, and Jay has some thoughts on this too, but like we have a couple of onesies that are magnet based, and I will say the magnets are like sewn into the onesie; they can't escape. But it's even easier than zipping. They just like magnet or right across them. So the magnet onesies I have enjoyed, but Jay has a PSA about magnets. So please to take the floor.
Yeah, we're just terrified of all magnets, especially little magnets that could end up in mouths and digestive tracts for a variety of reasons. I don't think that these onesies are going to be a problem, but like my mother-in-law brought us, trying to be very kind. We had a birthday party for Eliza, who's 6, and her birthday's in August. And so we did an outdoor birthday party, and she brought these resealable water balloons that reseal with magnets. And we're just like, yeah, that's so nice of you. We're going to use like the real balloons, just pelt each other with them, and like have welts all over our bodies, but at least the kids won't have magnets near them because these are there was a problem with them exploding or not exploding, but like they'd hit the ground and the magnet would pop out and then a kid could put that in his mouth. Anyway, that's our thing with
Mm-hmm.
magnets. But I think that in this case, because they're sewn in, because babies are so small, you're okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, when in doubt, you can also just get the zips. The double zip ones work great. So those are mine. What are some things? What's some dad stuff that you guys are really really loving and appreciating lately?
Yeah, so shifting to older kiddos. Well, first of all, we have used 2 full bottles of Resolve pet spray over the last 5 days because our 2 tiny dogs have had the runs all over the house. And so that is the main dad thing as a pup parent that we've been using. Now, mind you, our dogs are 12 and 14, so they're not puppies, but that's one thing. Resolve, definitely have carpet
Mhm.
cleaner if you have carpet in your house. Secondly, this goes back to Sky eating anything that wasn't just mommy's milk. He has always been addicted, and he's going to be 4 next week. Uh, he's always been addicted to pouches. So applesauce pouches, smoothie pouches, yogurt pouches, you name it. That kid eats 4 of them for breakfast every morning. So the second dad thing that I've been using a ton, this goes again back years, is pouches. Our buddy Max and I talk all the time about our budget for pouches every month. It is absolutely insane. Hopefully the tariffs don't hit the pouches. And then the last thing is our kids have had a little bit of runny noses over the last couple weeks. They're on the other side of it now, which is great. But we have been using this Wellemit's chest rub, kind of like, the Vapo Rub, but this is all organic. So we rub it on their chest and a little bit on the bottom of their feet at night, and it just helps them breathe, relaxes them, helps them fall asleep. And so we've been using that in tandem with humidifiers in their rooms. Been very dry here in Ohio, so we humidify their room as best we can.
Is there like a age on those? Ren, it's also been very dry here, and we have a humidifier going. But like a benefit of it being very dry is I've only had to like clean boogies out of her nose twice. But I imagine like, do you know off the top of your head the Welleman's chest rub? If there's like, don't use it if they're 2 weeks old, for example.
It's a great question, and we'll text you after we finish recording,
Beautiful.
and then we can share it in the show notes because I don't
Perfect.
know. A Welleman's chest rub is great.
Awesome. All right, that's everything we've got here. We'll get better at figuring out how to like close the show, but I can tell you when I stop recording, it's now been 38 minutes since I've snuggled my baby. So I'm gonna go snuggle my baby, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, that's
Love that.
episode
And
2.
I am in, as you can tell, our playroom, and I'm sitting in a chair that is like yay tall. So
Beautiful.
I'm probably gonna go stretch if I can
Mhm.
stand up out of this chair.
Great, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you next time.
See you next time.